So, are you a writer who just doesn't write? A painter who doesn't paint? Or maybe an entrepreneur who never actually starts a venture? I mean, have you ever bought a treadmill just to let it gather dust in the corner? Or maybe you've experienced this late night, crystal clear vision of the person you are meant to be, only to wake up the next morning and do absolutely nothing about it? Well, listen, if so, you are definitely not alone. There is this massive, nagging gap between the life we're living right now and the unlived life we dream about. And today, we're going to close that gap. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking Steven Pressfield's groundbreaking manifesto, The War of Art, Breaking Through the Blocks. Think of this as your tough love bootcamp. We're covering 3 core pillars today. Defining the ultimate enemy called resistance, learning exactly how to combat it by turning pro, and finally, accessing the higher realm of creative genius. All right, get ready, because we are going to war. Okay, let's dive into this. Meet the villain of our story. Now, Pressfield doesn't just call this a quirky psychological trait or, a minor lack of motivation. He calls it resistance. And resistance is the most toxic force on the planet. It's literally an energy field radiating from a work-in potential. It's a self-generated repelling force that has one singular goal, and that is to shove you away, distract you, and totally prevent you from doing your work. This isn't just a bad habit. It is literally an internal enemy out to kill your dreams. So, when exactly does this enemy strike? Well, resistance actually has a pretty predictable playlist of greatest hits. It kicks in the second you pursue any creative art. It attacks when you try to launch an entrepreneurial venture. Starting a new diet or health regimen? Yep, resistance is right there. Embarking on a program of spiritual advancement or trying to overcome a bad addiction? Resistance is waiting for you. Basically, it opposes any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. It absolutely hates it when you try to move from a lower sphere to a higher one. Now, you have to understand that resistance is not out to get you personally, but man, it is relentless. Resistance is the Terminator. It is the alien. It's the shark in Jaws. It cannot be reasoned with. It operates with the cold, hard indifference of rain or a force of nature. It's essentially an engine of destruction, programmed from the factory with one object only, to prevent us from doing our work. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't take days off, and it will assume literally any form just to deceive you. So let's look at how resistance actually disguises itself in our daily lives, starting with its absolute favorite manifestation, procrastination. Resistance is incredibly cunning. It doesn't tell us, hey, I'm never going to write my symphony. No. Instead, it whispers, I am going to write my symphony, I'm just going to start tomorrow. And guys, this is a profoundly dangerous habit. We don't just put off our lives today, we put them off until our deathbed. It is by far the easiest symptom to rationalize, and it's slowly, quietly burying your potential. Another incredibly sneaky symptom of resistance is self-dramatization. I mean, why put in years of disciplined, quiet work when you can get instant attention by creating a soap opera out of your life, right? Seeking out trouble, cultivating neuroses, or just obsessing over drama, these are really just artificial ways to feel alive. Resistance absolutely loves it when you manufacture crises. Why? Because it knows that as long as you're tangled up in drama, you aren't doing your work. And then there's victimhood. Okay, this requires some unapologetic, tough love. Cultivating a condition or casting yourself as a victim is really a form of passive-aggressive manipulation. It seeks to achieve gratification not by honest work, but by compelling other people to come to your rescue. The source makes this crystal clear. Casting yourself as a victim is the absolute antithesis of doing your work. A true working artist banishes trouble and victimhood from their world entirely. No exceptions. To really grasp the terrifying power of resistance, the source shares a pretty striking historical anecdote. At age 18, Adolf Hitler took an inheritance of 700 kronen and moved to Vienna to live and study as an artist. He even applied to the Academy of Fine Arts, but he never painted. Resistance beat him. The book impartially notes this staggering concept. It was literally easier for Hitler to start World War II than it was for him to face a blank square of canvas. Think about that. That is the devastating, reality-altering power of resistance. So how on earth do we defeat an enemy this powerful? Well, we have to transition from being an amateur to being a professional. Now, what's really interesting about this contrast is how stark it is. The amateur plays for fun, they work part-time, and they are utterly paralyzed by over-identifying with their art. But the professional plays for keeps. They carry a lunch pail, they commit full-time. The moment an artist turns pro, the whole shebang changes. They step into the arena and distance themselves, focusing strictly on the work itself.
But how do you actually turn pro? Well, the fascinating thing is you probably already know how. Most of us are already pros in at least one area, our day jobs. Think about it. We show up every day, we show up no matter what, we stay on the job all day, and we accept no excuses. The professional artist simply takes these unglamorous concrete rules and applies that exact same blue-collar discipline to their creative aspirations. They don't sit around waiting for the mood to strike, they literally just clock in.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. Imagine a delicate flower miraculously blooming right out of a heavy, stubborn concrete block. That block represents the crushing weight of resistance. The flower? That's your genius. A professional knows that the only way to crack that concrete and let your inner spirit break through is by applying relentless daily pressure. There's no magic trick, just showing up. You see, a professional completely rejects the myth of inspiration. There's this great story where someone asked the famous writer Somerset Maugham if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration. His reply? He said, "I write only when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp." I love that. A true pro never waits for inspiration. By performing the mundane physical act of sitting down and working, the pro forces the muse to synchronize her watch with theirs. To survive this daily battle, the professional has to build an arsenal of mental armor. First, they arm themselves with patience, knowing full well it's a marathon, not a sprint. Second, they ruthlessly eliminate chaos to create an orderly environment. Third, they don't wait for fear to magically vanish. They act right in the face of absolute terror. And crucially, they play it as it lays in the real world. The pro expects adversity, bad bounces, and cold winds, and they never complain about the weather. They just take the shot. Another massive difference is that the pro distances themselves from their instrument. An amateur identifies completely with their ego and their talent, which makes failure absolutely crushing. But a pro views their mind and body simply as tools. Think of Madonna. She doesn't walk around her house doing laundry in her stage costumes, right? She doesn't over-identify as Madonna. She employs the persona of Madonna to execute a specific campaign. The pro assesses their work coolly, objectively, and entirely impersonally. Because they distance themselves like that, the pro learns to self-validate. Consider Tiger Woods at the 2001 Masters. Right at the top of his backswing, someone in the gallery snapped a loud camera shutter. Now, Tiger stopped mid-swing, looked right at the culprit, stepped back, and then calmly drove the ball 310 yards dead down the middle. He didn't throw a tantrum, he didn't play the victim, and he certainly didn't let resistance disguise itself as external sabotage. He just governed his emotions and he did his job. Now, let's move to the third and final part of our explainer and see how this builds into our ultimate reward. Pressfield writes, "When we sit down each day and do our work, power concentrates around us. Ideas come, insights accrete." This right here is where the magic happens. By conquering resistance through that gritty, blue-collar professionalism, you become a magnetized rod. You suddenly gain access to what the source calls the higher realm. Accessing this higher realm, though, requires immense respect. Pressfield actually shares his own personal daily ritual. Before he types a single word, he recites the invocation of the muse from Homer's Odyssey. It's essentially a prayer, and it perfectly illustrates how committing to the labor summons angels, inspiration, and divine forces to aid the creator. We aren't just creating from nothing, we are inviting higher forces to flow through us. But, and this is a big but, they only show up if we are already sitting at our desks working. And remember, the muse favors working stiffs. She absolutely hates prima donnas. The working artist is basically an infantryman. Pressfield notes that a creator must adopt a hardcore Marine Corps mentality. You have to embrace the misery of the trenches. You are voluntarily signing up for a diet of isolation, rejection, and self-doubt. You have to find pride in outworking that misery, knowing that every single inch of ground gained against resistance is paid for in sweat. So, the finish line for this explainer is officially in sight. But remember, the danger is greatest right at the end. Right now, resistance is probably telling you to scroll to another explainer, to check your email, or, to just start tomorrow. Do not listen. The war is happening right now, literally inside your head. You have the tools, you know the enemy, and you know exactly how to turn pro. So what's it going to be? Will you log off, sit down, and do your work right now? The choice is entirely yours.